Hello there and welcome to Network Africa on Channels Television with me, Cynthia Are. Unfortunately, we begin on a rather sad note, and it's coming from within our shores. A bomb at a market in the town of Jemeta, northeastern Nigeria, has killed about 30 people. According to eyewitness accounts, the device might have been planted in a three-wheeled motorized scooter inside of the market in Adamawa State and was detonated at about 7 p.m. local time yesterday. Now, within minutes of that occurrence, a female suicide bomber killed 2 people at a checkpoint in Maiduguri, the Borno state capital. No one has claimed responsibility, but the attacks bear the hallmarks of the Boko Haram sect. The bombing is the latest attack in a series of explosions in the last few days that has killed around 80 people following the inauguration of the new president, Muhammadu Buhari, just last week. Now, high numbers of Nigerian refugees who've poured into Cameroon after fleeing Boko Haram attacks are putting a strain on facilities in camps in the north of the country. Camps like Minawao, which you're seeing on your screen right now, are operating at nearly double their capacity. Initially created to house about 18,000 people, it now caters to over 34,000. Aid workers say the numbers of refugees appear to have stabilized, but conditions remain dire. The number of people in northern Cameroon who fled their homes due to cross-border violence has also tripled since January to 106,000, and that's according to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Food shortages also threaten the refugees living in Cameroon, and WFP has struggled to secure funds for its operations in Cameroon, and in the past 6 months was only able to provide food assistance to 68,000. Now, Nigeria's new president indeed is taking the issue of security very seriously. He is currently in Chad, where he thanked Niger for their help, as well as Chad for their help actually encountering the Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria.
Having got the support of Chad and Niger especially in going into Nigeria, rescuing part of the territory occupied by Boko Haram and holding it, waiting for Nigerian troops to come and relieve them, I think they have made as much sacrifice as humanly possible to make sure that Boko Haram is adequately dealt with within the shortest possible time.
President Muhammadu Buhari of Nigeria. Now, many individuals and groups like the United Nations are calling for Boko Haram to be prosecuted for the horrendous crimes that it's committed. Now, the organization's top human rights official is calling on Nigeria's one-week-old president to thoroughly investigate and prosecute horrifying allegations of executions, rape, and amputations of children by the Islamist insurgent group.
The High Commissioner will be urging the new administration of the Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari to take urgent measures to bring to justice perpetrators of human rights violations and abuses, whether non-state or state actors. He's also calling on the authorities to ensure that counterinsurgency operations do not result in making the human rights devastation in the northeast of the country even worse.
Now, the war against Boko Haram continues, but according to reports by Amnesty International, it has come at the cost of about 8,000 civilian lives. Amnesty International says war crimes committed by Nigeria's military during the campaign against the sect have also claimed innocent lives, and the group says some 7,000 people died while in military detention, and another 1,200 people were killed by the country's armed forces during the past 4 years in what the group says were extrajudicial killings.
Days in detention were starvation, thirst, suffocation, severe overcrowding that led to spread of diseases, torture, lack of medical attention, and the use of fumigation chemicals in unventilated cells. The main causes of days in detention were starvation, thirst, suffocation, severe overcrowding that led to spread of diseases, torture, lack of medical attention, and the use of fumigation chemicals in unventilated cells.
We go now live to London, where Amnesty International's Daniel Eyre is standing by. Daniel, thank you very much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you for having me.
Now I'd like to ask you if there's enough proof for these allegations being made by Amnesty International concerning the Nigerian military, or what kind of proof is available?
Sure, our report is incredibly detailed. It spans 130 pages and is based on more than 400 interviews with eyewitnesses to human rights violations, people who managed to escape from military detention or were released, but also journalists, lawyers, local government officials, and repeated conversations with 8 military sources. In addition to that testimony, we've also collected more than 90 videos of human rights violations. You might remember in August last year, we published one of them. It showed Nigerian soldiers cutting the throats of unarmed detainees. We've also collected more than 800 official documents which show that authorities in Abuja knew about the high rates of deaths in custody that we've been talking about in our report and didn't take action to stop them. And numerous photographs as well. And these were collected in the course of 6 visits to northeast Nigeria in the last 2 or 3 years, and also a visit to northern Cameroon, where we interviewed Nigerian refugees.
Now, Daniel, to some extent, Amnesty International has come under some level of criticism for focusing slightly more to some extent, or relatively more, to what might have happened with the military killing civilians, as the report says, as opposed to the crimes committed by Boko Haram sect.
This is a really important question, actually. This report has focused exclusively on the military, and that's because in April of this year, we published a 90-page report which focused exclusively on Boko Haram. We found that Boko Haram had committed war crimes and crimes against humanity, that since the beginning of 2014, they'd killed more than 5,500 civilians. It spoke about the horrific treatment they were meting out to civilians trapped in areas under their control. So we are balanced. We're covering the military in this report, we cover Boko Haram in the last report, and if you go back, ever since 2012, every year we've published a report on the abuses committed by Boko Haram, but we balance that by also looking at the abuses committed by the military.
Well, finally, Daniel, based on these reports which you've done, both on the military and Boko Haram, what exactly would Amnesty International like to see in terms of prosecution if both are valid?
Well, there's a few things that we've been calling on. And first of all, we're asking that the government do more to protect civilians from Boko Haram. That has to be the priority. But secondly, safeguards need to be introduced to stop the military from committing human rights violations against civilians and against Boko Haram suspects themselves. And in fact, we believe that President Buhari has recognized this. In his inauguration speech, he spoke about the need to review the rules of engagement of the military to stop these human rights violations occurring. Now, in our view, investigations should be as broad as possible. They need to cover crimes committed by both sides of the conflict, by government forces, by Boko Haram, and perpetrators need to be brought to justice.
Well, Daniel Eyre of Amnesty International, thank you very much for your insight. We appreciate your time and your input. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We were speaking to Daniel Eyre of Amnesty International concerning the reports that was released about the Nigerian military having killed about 8,000 civilians while the crackdown on Boko Haram is going on. But we're going to speak to our own human rights lawyer right here in Lagos, Mr. Ebun Adegboruwa. He joins us via telephone. Mr. Adegboruwa, thank you very much for speaking with us on Network Africa.
Thank you very much.
What do you make of Amnesty International's report?
Well, I believe that over the years, Amnesty International has acquired a good reputation of monitoring abuses of human rights and have been mostly a champion of the observance and promotion of human rights by governments, by individuals, and all those entrusted with power on behalf of the people. And so I must commend Amnesty International for its consistency over the years. But however, in the light of the unconventional nature of the war going on in Nigeria that has been waged on our people by Boko Haram, I believe that a different approach is required in terms of monitoring, in terms of reporting, because the lacuna you will see in this report is very glaring. And that is this. From the unconventional nature of the Boko Haram war, it is difficult to distinguish between when Boko Haram is imitating the Nigerian army and when the Nigerian army is actually the ones guilty of the offenses. Because in most cases, the Boko Haram people are masquerading and using the uniform and even using military equipment to terrorize our people and also to perpetrate their activities. So I suspect that in most cases, these atrocities that have been claimed to have been performed by the military in Nigeria must have been undertaken by Boko Haram, but using the uniform, using the weapon, and indeed using the name of the Nigerian military. So the question to ask Amnesty International is that, since these things were not eyewitnesses in terms of they being there to witness the event, it is difficult to rely on the evidences of people who only see people who wear uniform, because it's easy to pass on Boko Haram for Nigerian military. And then secondly is the point that before you will ask that Nigerian military be tried for war crimes, you must be talking about genocide. You must be talking about deliberate attempts to wipe out people, deliberate attempts to turn civilians into slaves, deliberate attempts to take prisoners of war and turn them to slaves, deliberate attempts of torture. I think that indeed in Nigeria, we must commend our military for their civility. There may be cases of extremism, but they must be few and far between. And indeed, you will notice that in Nigeria, Boko Haram had been the one provoking the military into action, and our people have always been on the defensive. So I suspect that in this particular time, in this report that Amnesty has released, maybe there is a gap in terms of the reliability and reputation of the witnesses that they rely upon for this report.
Oh, Mr. Adegboruwa, thank you very much. I believe in days to come we'll indeed see if there are gaps in that report. Thank you very much for your time and your input. Thank you.
Thank you.